At just 14, he already knew he would become a pilot for the Royal Air Force. He fulfilled that dream and went on to become one of the most decorated West Indian airmen in the RAF. Ulric Cross's distinction didn't end with his bravery in the Second World War. And now that's captured in the new film, Hero, inspired by the extraordinary life and times of Mr. Ulric Cross. It was made by filmmaker and producer Frances Ann Solomon. She is also the creator of the Toronto-based Caribbean Tales International Film Festival, and she joins us now. Hi.
Hi.
It's nice to meet you, and it's nice to have you here in the studio for the agenda.
Wonderful to be here.
Before we start our conversation, I'd like to show the audience at home a trailer of Hero, the film that you made. Sheldon, please roll.
Building a movement is not easy, Mr. Cross.
I will go to Ghana.
This is Ghana, man.
Yes. Welcome to Ghana, my friend.
Our President Kwame Nkrumah and the people came together to unite Africa.
At last, Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever!
Independence came to over a dozen states peaceably, but in the Belgian Congo, freedom was followed by rioting and army mutiny, a reign of terror and disorder.
Well, Mr. Bumbutu, things seem to be a bit unstable.
This is my country, the Republic of Congo.
Go well, Mr. Cross, and do big things.
What a life. Yeah. Just watching that trailer, I get goosebumps on my hands. Why did you want to tell the story of Mr. Ulric Cross?
Okay, so what happened was a family friend of ours, I come from Trinidad, approached my mother on his deathbed.
And he's from Trinidad.
And he's from Trinidad. And he asked my mother, as he was dying, to get this film made. I think he really wanted me to do it as the kind of filmmaker in the family, but he went to my mom, who's his best friend. And my mom raised money at 70-something. She became a film producer to honor the deathbed wish of her friend. And to help her, I got involved. All I knew about Ulric at the time was that he was a highly decorated Second World War RAF veteran. And I began to research more, which in itself is heroic, right? We don't know enough about the contributions of Black, Caribbean, African people from to the Second World War, in the Second World War.
And they played a pivotal role.
And they played an absolutely pivotal role. And they encountered all kinds of obstacles along the way. And it's a big story.
We're going to talk more about that in a little bit.
Yeah. But what I discovered really was what happened after. Because he stayed on in England and he was recruited by another Trinidadian, a man called George Padmore, who was the mentor to Kwame Nkrumah.
We're going to talk more about that in a little second, but I wanted to know more about Ulric Cross and his childhood.
Yeah.
What was his childhood like?
Well, this is also a little-known story that post-slavery, there was a burgeoning middle class, right, that came out of the black populations. They worked their way up. They used education, which was very present in the colonies at the time, as a big ladder to pull their way up. And so there was this middle class, this colored middle class that was very aspirational, incredibly ambitious, and wanted to do things with their lives. And that's where Ulric came out. He was from an area of Trinidad called Belmont, and a lot of people came from that area.
And when you say colored, that means they weren't Black and they weren't white, right?
Well, in those days, they didn't use the word Black. Okay. Everybody, non-white people were colored, right? But yes, for the most part, these were Black and brown people who, through education, diligence, discipline, hard work, and sheer ambition, had pulled themselves up from the working classes through the trades got education. Some of them went to university, got scholarships to go to university in England, and very ambitious.
And Ulric was really smart. Out of 9 kids, I think he had the best grades.
Yeah, and he got into, one of the prestige schools, the white schools in Trinidad, which only 8 people a year got into, 8 Black people. And so was able to get that level of education. And then the idea was that he would go to university, he would get a scholarship. They gave 1 scholarship a year to Black students. And because his mother died, he kind of had a nervous breakdown and his ambitions were shelved. But then along came the war. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of people, the war was a way out. Because once the British government opened the doors to colored participation in the war, because early on in the war, they didn't want Black people in the war. But at a certain point in time, they needed that added manpower. And so they opened the gates to educated, middle class, primarily light-skinned participants from the colonies to come. And this was a way out for all those people who had not been able to get the 1 scholarship. Right?
And even before he joined the RAF, as a young boy, Ulric wanted to be a pilot.
Yeah, he had that dream. Yeah. And I have wondered whether, a lot of those kids were very influenced by images and stories of the First World War, when a lot of young men also from the colonies joined up and became involved. And so, and there were stories and books about the First World War and about, so he had it in his head that when he grew up, he was going to be Flight Lieutenant Ulric Cross. And that's, he wanted to fly, he wanted to be a pilot, yeah.
But once he joined, he was kind of in for a shock because it took him 2 years to become a pilot. Why did it take so long for him to be even considered for a pilot?
Well, he wasn't able to become a pilot because he was too Black. But through his, because he was so able, smart, and learned fast, and very effective, he became a navigator in what was called the Pathfinder Force. Mm-hmm. And this was like an elite squad of fighter servicemen, right? Something like the Navy, something like the SEALs now, secret, highly trained, and they went on very dangerous missions. They flew wooden planes called mosquitoes. They were tiny little planes made of wood, so very light, and they would cross the channel and go in low to the ground so that they would miss the radars. And they would go in and mark the targets for the bombers coming overhead above the clouds. So they would throw down a flare, right? Mm-hmm. And because they were so close, they had a better chance of hitting the target, and then the bombers had 10 seconds to drop a bomb, right? And then everybody had to pull out. So prior to this kind of revolution in technology of the time, Britain was basically losing the war to Germany. There had been the Blitz. 80,000 British people died in the Blitz on British soil. And they were losing the war because they were not able to hit their targets.
But this group of pilots was very successful. And you made a comment that I want to go back to. You said he wasn't able to become a pilot when he initially joined because he was too Black. But he also turned out to be the only Black person in the
Pathfinder
Force. In the Pathfinder Force. So what did you mean by too Black? Are you saying that Black people weren't allowed to fly planes during the war?
Yeah. There were some who slipped through. They had a questionnaire and tests that you had to do. Like one of the questions was, are you of pure European descent? And so those were the only people who initially were allowed to become pilots. Now, there were some colored pilots who did get through. I know of maybe 2. They were very light-skinned. They could almost pass for white. And but for the most part, Black people were not allowed to fly planes.
So Ulric flew on 80 missions, and he said in the film that he expected to die in the last 30 of them, but he survived. And after the war, he's a hero. What happened? Was it easy for him to find work after that, or?
Well, this is a kind of story in itself, a fairly common story that you hear about wars, right? Which is that, those who go and serve when the war is done, they're pretty well discarded. But in England at the time, it was kind of augmented by the fact that they wanted people to come, like they wanted women to step up and work during the war. But once the war was done, they wanted everybody to go back where they came from and for the status quo to be reestablished. So they did not. But all these people had British passports. They had, that's why they had fought in the war, because they wanted, if they survived, to be able to have access to education, to be able to have lives, right? And what they found was a wall of racism all of a sudden. Before it was, oh, please, welcome, come and join us. You are our brothers, you know, we are all part of the British Empire. And suddenly it was, you're colored, we don't want you. And there was huge race tension coming out after the war that was faced. And so even though he was able to get a scholarship to get an accelerated law degree through his own efforts, he wasn't able to practice law in England.
I have a clip from the BBC of when Ulric was in the RAF. Sheldon, can you please roll it?
And now I'm going to ask Flying Officer Ulric Cross to speak for West Indians in the services. Ulric is a navigator in one of our own bomber squadrons.
Well, it's a job to know where to start. There are so many of us doing so many different things. In the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, in Air Sea Rescue and the Marines. In the RENs, the ATS, the WAF, and the nursing services. Together with others from the British Commonwealth of Nations, with men and women from the rest of the United Nations, West Indians are fighting for the new world that we all want to see.
Thank you, Ulric, and happy landing.
There were very few black people in England. One has to remember that. And I know walking through any small town or village in England, school children would stop you to ask you the time, and you know they just wanted to hear you speak.
So things didn't work out in England. He was having a hard time finding work. He became a lawyer. He was working during the day, studying at night. So he meets a gentleman that you mentioned earlier, George Padmore, and he helps Kwame Nkrumah and Ghana to become the first African country to gain independence. What role did Ulric play in all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just to backtrack a tiny bit, Padmore himself was an extraordinary person because he came from Trinidad and he had trained in Russia with Trotsky in and had a very clear vision of how the colonies would be liberated from capitalism and colonialism. The
colonies in Africa.
The colonies in Africa and the West Indies, in the same way as Russia had been liberated from, you know, the Tsar and that imperial structure. And so he was really the mentor of and the founder of what became known as Pan-Africanism, which was the idea that African people all over the world should work to liberate and reconstruct Africa. And that's why when he became the mentor of the first prime minister of the first independent African country, Kwame Nkrumah, his idea was to bring skilled people from all over the African diaspora to the table, to Africa, to help reconstruct Africa after the colonists had left.
Now, I want to know if this is, because we later find out in the film that one of Ulric's friends is a spy for the British intelligence agency, and this friend betrays Ulric. Did you get any sense from Ulric how he dealt with that betrayal?
It was very, very common, from what I understand. Not just that, you have to understand that the colonial powers had vested interests in Africa and the Caribbean. Like specifically, Africa was the largest source of natural resource in the world. Congo had the biggest store of diamonds. Ghana, diamonds and gold. So they had no intention of giving up that control when independence came. And so they did everything they could to undermine the independence efforts of these agitators, what they saw as these people who wanted to control their own resources and countries. And so it was very common. You had spies who were diplomats. You had spies who were with the Peace Corps, who were with government agencies. You had spies infiltrated all over the place, white and colored and everywhere. You just never knew really who was, you know, spying on you and feeding information. And they were very successful. I mean, that was just one of the ways. Then, you know, obviously, you know, direct attack on a lot of these leaders was another one. Funding the opposition to these countries was another one. Fairly standard tactics. In terms of, to reply to your question, how Ulric felt about this, I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot about Ulric I don't know, because as I said, the way his description of his life was very cryptic and fact-based. We had to put a lot into trying to get into his mind and see the world from his point of view and reconstruct what it must have been like to live through that.
To survive that.
And to survive it. And a lot of people didn't survive. But I do believe that, on the one hand, I'm sure those personal betrayals were incredibly painful, right? They always are. But on the other hand, my understanding was that it was very common.
We only have a few minutes left. It's been such a great conversation. No, don't apologize. It's been great. What would you say was the most challenging aspect for you in making this film?
Well, we shot it in Trinidad, Ghana, England, and here in Toronto. We did all the post-work and pickup, and that was challenging. I wanted it to be authentic. I wanted to tell the story from the inside. I was not prepared to compromise on the integrity and authenticity of the voice of that character. It's a story that hasn't been told. A lot of people don't know that story. So I wanted to do it well. And to do that, there was a shortage of information. And so the actual process of finding a way to tell the story that kind of filled it out as a film, but also showed you what it was really like in each of those different places. It has a global scope, and yet it's a personal story. And so finding that balance narratively was difficult. And then I'm sure you saw that I was interweaving archive with dramatization in a way almost as if they belong together. It wasn't archive, then dramatization. It was very much, they were wed, So that was also a challenge.
In his lifetime, he was a squadron leader for the RAF. He was a judge. He was a BBC producer. Mm-hmm. He was a dean of law. He counseled presidents, prime ministers. Having told this film and taking a step back, what would you say was the most fascinating aspect of his story that you discovered on this journey?
Just what you said. It's important that young people, young Black and people from the diaspora understand what that there are people who came before on whose broad shoulders we stand, right? Who had big lives, who were heroes, because the portrayals we see in the media of us tends to be, gang leaders and prostitutes and people who live, small lives with limited options. This man had the world as his ambition, and he changed it. And that is a lesson that I think it's important for young people to take on board.
Hero was screened at the Caribbean Tales International Film Festival in Toronto. And you're the founder of this festival, which began in 2001. What would you say is the biggest change that you've witnessed during that time when it comes to film coming from the Caribbean?
Well, I set up that festival as a platform for the broad range and diversity and scope and of all our stories. Not a narrow perspective, but big. And it was important for me that Hero showed there to our audiences first. In terms of what has changed, I think definitely the industry is opening up to some extent to diverse stories, to stories from other places, to lots of different voices. Not enough. But the moment is there for us. And I think it's very important for us to grab that responsibility and make our voices heard, because there are still very worrying perspectives that have, vested interests in making sure that we remain silent.
Well, Frances Ann, thank you so much for being here and introducing us to the life of Ulric Cross.
You're very welcome, and I thank you.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.